Hi, good afternoon. I'm Bill Bratton, Police Commissioner for the City of New York, joined by Mayor Bill de Blasio, as well as a number of command staff that will be available to answer specific questions that you might have relative to the New Year's Eve event that will be held here very shortly. And so I want to welcome you. We are going to attempt today to respond to any questions you might have relative to that event. The runner of this event will be, I'll be introducing the mayor momentarily, that he will then be followed by Chief of Department James O'Neill, who will give you the overview of police preparations for the events here in Times Square on New Year's Eve and the days leading up to it. He'll be followed by Chief James Waters, who runs our counterterrorism operation. He'll give you a quick overview of some of the threat analysis that we're looking at this particular time. Diego Rodriguez, the Assistant Director of the FBI for the New York region, will also then speak relative to security concerns that we might have for this event. We'll then open it up to questions on topic relative to the New Year's event, followed then by the opportunity for police-related questions on other issues that you might have interest in, and then police component will leave, and then Mayor de Blasio will be here to go off topic on anything that you want to ask of him. Being very generous with your time here today. Very good.
We're ready.
Okay, with that, I'd like to introduce Mayor Bill de Blasio, and we'll move on with our press conference. First off, if I may,
Please.
a couple of acknowledgments that certainly they're in the audience here with us. Tim Tompkins, president of the Times Square Alliance, and Jeffrey Strauss, who is the president of Countdown Entertainment, who are working very hard to coordinate the events that will be held here in Times Square. And I want to thank David Wicks, the vice president of Nasdaq, for providing this venue for us. You should be all very happy, as we are, that we're in out of the weather for this conference. So, again, a thank you to all three of those gentlemen. Okay.
Well, thank you very much, Commissioner, and thank you for your leadership as we end another year of extraordinary success for the NYPD. I want to thank you for all you've done for the people of this city this year and for all that the men and women of the NYPD have achieved this year. Commissioner and I are going to go a little bit later on today to a somber gathering to the wake for Detective Lem, and we have his family in our thoughts and prayers, and obviously this is a painful moment for the city as we've lost a very good man serving our nation overseas. But there is a lot to be thankful for at the same time, and we have someone with us today that I'd like to introduce you to, who really represents all that is good about the city and all that's good about the NYPD, and I'd like to ask him to just come forward for a moment. I'm going to tell you a quick story, then talk to you about the specific preparations here related to New Year's Eve. I'd like Officer Christian Campoverde to please come forward, and your wife Daniela join us. This is a story that all New Yorkers will appreciate. Officer Campoverde was shopping with his family at the Queens Center Mall last week. He saw a man about to jump off a balcony. He approached him, he spoke to him, he calmed him down, he got the man to safety and treatment. I want to say, Officer Campoverde, I want to thank you for your extraordinary efforts. Officer has benefited from the crisis intervention training that the Commissioner and his team have focused on for the men and women of the NYPD to help them recognize mental illness challenges and how to de-escalate difficult situations. 5,000 plus officers are getting this training, and it's related to our Thrive NYC initiative around mental health. Our police officers are at the front line in so many ways, including the front line of dealing with people with mental health challenges. And Officer Campoverde, you did it right, and you saved a life, and we are all very proud of you. Thank you. Well done. Well done. Thank you. Now, as we prepare for New Year's Eve, we know hundreds of thousands of folks from all over the world will be gathering here in Times Square. It is a time-honored tradition. It is something people look forward to all year. It's one of the great events in this city. Each year, it's iconic and an example of New York City at its best, and the eyes of the world, to be honest. Well, we will be prepared. The NYPD has done extraordinary work preparing for this event. I want to thank Commissioner Bratton and his team. I want to thank every one of our partner agencies who have been extraordinary in this effort as well. I want to particularly thank the FBI Assistant Director in charge for the New York Field Office, Diego Rodriguez, for his leadership. We're ready, and I had the honor yesterday of participating in one of the preparatory exercises, a tabletop exercise at One Police Plaza, led by some of the key leaders of this department, including our Chief of Counterterrorism, James Waters, and our Deputy Commissioner for Intelligence and Counterterrorism, John Miller. I want to thank them for that very careful and exhaustive exercise, preparing for any number of eventualities. And this is why the NYPD is so great at what it does. Commissioner Bratton, Chief of Department Jimmy O'Neill, the whole leadership team constantly drills, constantly focuses on preparation. I want to thank you for all the work that's going into making sure that we will be safe. And the numbers of officers that will be there will be extraordinary, and the preparation is extraordinary as well. I also want to thank key folks who are here with us today who have been part of this effort, our Director of Citywide Events, Michael Paul Carey. I want to thank the Chair of the City Council Public Safety Committee, Vanessa Gibson, who's been so supportive of all police efforts. And I join the Commissioner in thanking Jeffrey Strauss of Countdown Entertainment and Tim Tompkins of the Times Square Alliance, who are key partners in this effort. Now, we pride ourselves in this city. We are the best prepared city in the country, the best prepared city to prevent terrorism and to deal with any event should it occur. For 14 years, the NYPD has successfully thwarted many, many attempts on this city. Many plots were thwarted because of the extraordinary intelligence work and the on-the-ground work of the NYPD. And I mentioned at the beginning, this is against the backdrop of continued success in fighting crime. NYPD has once again shown it can keep driving down crime. We will end this year with yet another reduction in crime, a 2% drop in crime since last year, a reduction in shootings since last year. A lot of success that the men and women of this department can be proud of. On New Year's Eve, the department will be out in force. There will be a tremendous number of officers who you will see. There will be many officers you won't see. There will be obvious security measures you will see and a number of measures you won't see. What we can assure you is that the preparations are extraordinary, and we are benefiting now from a new element that is our Critical Response Command. This was authorized in the budget in June by the City Council. 500-plus member Critical Response Command, specifically chosen and trained officers who work full-time on counterterrorism, well-trained, well-armed, prepared for any eventuality. This is the first time we've had such a full-time dedicated force in such a number in this city, and it is going to make a big difference. I just want to quickly summarize in Spanish just a few sentences before turning over to my colleagues. El Año Nuevo es una de las fiestas más grandes y maravillosas en nuestra ciudad. La policía está trabajando para garantizar la seguridad de toda la gente que vendrá a celebrar en Times Square. Habrá miles de policías, incluyendo a nuestra nueva unidad especial antiterrorista. El NYPD es el mejor departamento de policía del mundo y trabaja cada día para mantener segura a toda nuestra ciudad de Nueva York. With that, again, thank you, Commissioner Bratton, for these extraordinary preparations, and I know that people looking forward to celebrating on New Year's Eve will be in the good hands of the NYPD, and we'll have a safe and wonderful celebration together. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, sir. Chief Jimmy O'Neill, Chief of Department, will give you an overview on the department's preparations and coordination with other city agencies for the events here on the 1st. Jimmy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Commissioner. Good afternoon, everyone. Just want to tell you a little bit about what we put together for the annual New Year's Eve celebration in Times Square. As we do every year, we began preparing for this after the final piece of confetti fell last January 1st. This year's event, sponsored by the Times Square Alliance, will span from West 38th Street to West 59th Street from 6th to 8th Avenues. While the program for the evening officially begins at 6, streets will start getting closed as early as 4 a.m. And we know from experience the first spectators will begin showing up shortly thereafter. I don't know how they do it. About 65 large spectator pens will be set up and filled beginning about 9:15 a.m. Last year, they held well over 1 million people. We'll start checking with handheld magnetometers and we'll be checking everyone coming into the pens. There'll be 14 access points. They are 38th, 45th, 49th, 52nd, 58th, and 59th Streets at 6th and 8th Avenues, 54th Street at 6th Avenue, and 55th Street at 8th Avenue. And as always, backpacks, duffel bags, packages, and alcohol will not be allowed. Traffic will be shut down in the bow tie area at Broadway and 7th Avenue from 41st to 43rd Streets at 3 p.m. That area will remain frozen with no spectators for the duration of the night. In addition to those enjoying the live performances and the ball drop in Times Square, there'll be thousands of Broadway theatergoers, thousands more enjoying private parties, concerts, bars, clubs, restaurants, and other venues around the city. While there is no threat we deem credible to any New York event, we will employ a strong counterterrorism presence, as well as we have done with all major events since 9/11. There will be much that the public will see, as the mayor said, and there'll be much the public will not see. The usual elements of a highly visible police deployment will include thousands of uniformed police officers at street level and also in the subways, in the air above and on the waterways all around New York City. We'll have over 5,000 officers assigned to Times Square. There'll be hundreds of traffic agents, plus additional mobile cameras, chemical and radiation detectors, specially trained police dogs sniffing for traces of explosives, cops on horsebacks, police helicopters, and police boats. We'll have observation posts manned by ESU cops looking for suspicious activity, while cops in plain clothes keep watch amid the crowds. The NYPD makes a habit of putting all those extra layers of protection behind our regular patrol component. The newest addition to the NYPD, if you were at the graduation ceremony, approximately 1,200 probationary cops who graduated from the academy today will be assigned to their first post at this event. And it's not even going to be that cold for them. And this year, for the first time, our force will be supplemented by hundreds of highly trained officers armed with long guns, assigned to our new Critical Response Command and our Strategic Response Group. They are well-trained, armed, and they're ready to go, which puts us ahead of any other city in the United States, by far, and likely any other city in the world in terms of preparedness. And in addition to all this, we continue to fully staff our patrol operations around the city. Obviously, Midtown is going to be exceptionally crowded on Thursday, and I urge anyone coming into the city to leave their cars at home and to use public transportation. And on our roadways, you can expect to see safety and DWI checkpoints. We'll also have a full complement of officers safeguarding many other events, including concerts at MSG, Barclays Center, Big Apple Circus, and the Metropolitan Opera, fireworks off Liberty Island and Coney Island, the annual 4-mile midnight run in Central Park, and various religious services. What I want people to take away from this is that leave the worrying to the NYPD. People should feel safe this New Year's Eve because we're there. You're going to have one of the most well-policed, best-protected events at one of the safest venues in the entire world, given all the assets that we deploy there. And this will ensure that New York City has yet another safe and enjoyable New Year's Eve celebration, as we do every year. Thanks.
Chief James Waters, who heads up our counterterrorism operation, will give you an overview of that particular function. Jimmy?
So if I'd like to just give you just a little bit of a description on if you were to come into the city for New Year's Eve and a celebration, you would enter from 6th or 8th Avenue, and the first thing you would encounter would be uniformed police officers that will be securing those streets, those entry points that Chief O'Neill mentioned. Your bags will be inspected, if pocketbooks, etc. You'll go through either a magnetometer or a hand wand, and then you'll proceed toward a pen area. Along the way, some of the officers, the counterterrorism officers, will have personal radiation detection devices on their gun belts, so they'll measure any kind of radiation that you may be emitting. That most likely would be a medical treatment. That person would be stopped, obviously, very courteously, and asked, why they're emitting some kind of radiation. You will see a long gun team about 50 yards down. They are there in case anyone tries to breach the entry point, and you'll see explosive detection canine dogs throughout the event, both at the entry points and all along the way. Once you successfully complete that little drill of going through, you'll make your way down into the bow tie, into Times Square, where you'll be entering a pen. Before you enter that pen, you'll be screened again with handheld wands, explosive detection canine dogs, and officers equipped with personal radiation detection equipment. And then you'll enter the pen, where you remain for the remainder of the time until the ball drops. If for any reason you decide that you'd like to leave, you're more than welcome to, but you'll have to start the whole process again from the very beginning and wherever it is that the pens are filled to. So if you're already on 44th Street with a good view and you leave for any reason, you go to the end of the line, so to speak. There will be a lot that you will see. As Chief O'Neill said, there will be a lot of things that you won't see. Okay, there are thousands, hundreds, if not 1,000 cameras in the area that we will be monitoring continuously throughout the evening. We'll have heavy weapons teams, our elite emergency service personnel, led by Chief Whedon and Chief Giordano, will be out. They're capable of responding within seconds to any threat. And then we anticipate this, while this is a complex event, it's something that we plan for not just within the last week or two, but we plan on January 2nd of this year, and we run all the way through. We monitor threat information and intelligence information through our partners with the FBI and all the other government agencies, Department of Homeland Security, CIA, et cetera. And we are very, very confident that New Year's Eve in New York City will be the safest place in the world to be.
Thank you, Jimmy. As Chief Waters mentioned, that the responsibility for safety and security doesn't just reside with the mayor and the New York City Police Department. We are very dependent on the shared responsibility with federal colleagues, and very specifically the FBI, the Joint Terrorism Task Force. And in that regard, that we have seamless relationships with all of the colleagues that we are so dependent on to ensure the safety of the public. With that, I'd like to bring up the Assistant Director for the FBI, who runs the New York office and who has very specific responsibility for the Joint Terrorism Task Force. Diego.
Thanks, Commissioner. Thank you, Mayor. In the coming days, hundreds of thousands of people will join us here in New York as we ring in the new year. As you can imagine, preparation for events such as this are entirely a cooperative effort. No one federal, state, or local agency can carry out the measures necessary to secure an event such as this. The FBI continues to work with our law enforcement, intelligence, and federal partners through our Joint Terrorism Task Force in order to keep this great city of ours safe. The expertise of each participating agency is critical to the success of this whole coordinated security plan. The FBI's highly trained specialty teams are prepared and standing by to respond to any possible occurrence that may require action on our part. Other personnel will be working behind the scenes to monitor and investigate any threat information we receive. We continue to maintain a high state of readiness to protect the city from any threat or terrorist event. While an event this size has the potential to raise concern and cause inconveniences, I ask you to enjoy this wonderful time as our city takes center stage once again for this exciting celebration. Have a nice New Year, folks.
Okay, we are available for specific questions. Before starting the questions, I would indicate one of them that you're bound to ask is about the threat picture. We are not aware of any threat at this time that we deem credible, and we have a constant threat analysis stream that we are constantly reviewing. But again, we are not aware of any threat at this time that we deem credible to this event here in Times Square. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm Don Dale with CBS News. This is for the Commissioner. Thinking of Paris and San Bernardino, California, the pattern this year has been terror attacks on relatively small, soft targets. With all the focus on Times Square, what about the thousands of businesses outside this area?
As the chief referenced, we'll have approximately, actually close to 6,000 officers in and around the Times Square event. We'll also be policing, as he referenced, major events on Coney Island, up here in Central Park, and we will in addition have additional resources, normal patrol resources, out in the various precincts. Some of those will be supplemented with additional overtime personnel, so that the ability to protect everything all the time, everywhere, is not possible in any venue anywhere in the world. But both through our capabilities on the threat analysis beforehand, the prevention side of it, as well as the capability to respond very quickly. And in that regard, we have enhanced significantly the capabilities of the department over the last several months. He's referenced the new units, the Critical Response Command, the Strategic Response Group, almost 1,400 additional officers in addition to the emergency service units that people in New York are used to seeing. So we believe we are as prepared as anybody can be for the strategic focus here in Times Square, the other major venues, but also the policing of the city that we do every day, day in and day out.
Wait. Okay, you go first then. That's okay.
Threat conditions and levels are not the same all the time. Sometimes they're weighing, sometimes they're more serious. How do you compare this New Year's Eve and your concerns with New Year's Eve in past years where you've had different events happening around the world with different degrees of threat?
Well, looking at the ones I'm more specifically aware of, certainly during my time as commissioner, we are aware that the threat picture has changed because of ICES. It's changed significantly from what it was a year ago or 2 years ago. And in response to that, and in fact ahead of that in some respects, that's why we have enlarged our capabilities here in the city with these additional units. We have a lot more personnel. We have a lot more personnel that have been trained on how to deal with these issues, and we're constantly trying to expand the equipment. We're in the process, for example, we'll have a lot of dogs out on that evening. You'll see them everywhere. We're already in the process of expanding that capability very significantly also.
On New Year's Eve, there's always a heavy police presence in Times Square. In light of Paris, if you're going to Times Square year in and year out to celebrate this, what exactly, specifically, are you going to see that's different?
More police that will have, I think it's about 600 to 800 additional officers over and above what we've had. You see many more with the heavy equipment, the long guns that they refer to, the helmets, et cetera, that there will be, as the chief mentioned, at every checkpoint, those types of capabilities will be there. In addition, we have our Hercules teams, which are the emergency service unit groups that you so frequently see around the city. We'll have additional Hercules teams out that evening. So the public should expect to see, not only in the Times Square area, but literally throughout the city, that particularly at the special venues, a very significantly enhanced police presence. And in addition, the what you don't see, the coordination behind the scenes with our colleagues, the Federal Joint Terrorism Task Force. There's a lot behind the scenes that you won't see. We have enhanced the camera capabilities in and around Times Square for this event, over and above the very extensive system that we already have. So again, that we're as prepared as you can be for this event coming up.
You mentioned before 10 entrance points. Is that something new this year, or is that how it's previously been?
That's how last year's and the previous years have been set up, and nothing's changed.
Chief, what about the second swing? Is that new? Like, was that always in place?
No, it's always been in place.
Go ahead.
The critical response team, those 500 members, can you say what they would respond to, what they do, and why is that a difference in Mayor, if I can? Just from you, is New York ready? Given Paris, given
Yeah.
San Bernardino, is New York ready?
Well, let me start and then turn to the Commissioner. Yes, New York is ready. We're the best prepared city in the country. We know how to do big events. We've shown it time and time again. There was real concern before, for example, the Thanksgiving parade. We ended up having the biggest attendance we've ever had, an extraordinary NYPD presence. It went beautifully. There was concern before the tree lighting ceremony in Rockefeller Center. Same thing. We beefed up NYPD presence, went very smoothly. We're going to do the same thing here. One of the realities, as Commissioner Bratton said, is there's a new world because of what's happened with ISIS. I had the occasion back in January to go to Paris after the first attacks there. And in the conversations after I returned with the commissioner, it really helped to solidify our thinking about the need for this critical response command. We got great support from the City Council in June, and we authorized it and put the money in the budget to do it. The difference now is we have a much better trained force, again, a dedicated force. These 500+ members of NYPD, full-time, this is what they do. They're trained, they're armed specifically to prevent terror, and God forbid there were an incident, to respond very, very quickly. As the Commissioner said, to respond, in fact, in multiple locations, if necessary, as many as several dozen, if necessary. So you could not be more prepared than what the NYPD has put together here, and that's why New Yorkers should feel very, very comfortable going about their business over these holidays.
Well, we've also enhanced that as we're continually moving forward, not resting on our laurels, if you will. We currently have 20,000 of the new smartphones out in the field. 20,000 of our personnel have them. By March, all 35,000 will have those. We have the ability to instantly message every one of those devices with pictures of people we might be looking for, with threat information, lost children, those 1,200 new cops that we just graduated down at Madison Square Garden. They'll all be here. They all have those devices, first class. So we have the ability to distribute information in a much easier fashion than we've had in the past. We have additionally coordination with the various venues in terms of the ability to use the sound systems to be able to convey messages to the public if necessary during the course of the event. So there's a lot of planning's gone into this, and we've learned from the past, and we plan accordingly. And the new threat picture is something that we're very aware of and have planned for. In addition to what the mayor pointed out, I'd point out that we recently had the visit of the Pope and the UN visit, largest gathering of world leaders, I believe, in modern times. And that event went off, and that was another one that had a very significant threat picture to it. Again, we believe that we are very, very well prepared, and we expect to have a very enjoyable event here in Times Square.
Yep.
The company that makes the ShotSpotter gunshot detection technology talks about how New Year's Eve is a time for a huge amount of celebratory gunfire in other cities. I'm wondering if that happened last year, if you expected that in New York City, and if so this year, how are you concerned that officers are going to be driving around chasing celebratory gunfire in the areas that happen?
We're very fortunate that we have nowhere on the scale of what I experienced in Los Angeles, what Detroit experiences every year, where every idiot in the world stands on his front porch and starts shooting in the air, not recognizing what goes up is going to come down. That in L.A., just about every cop in L.A. was under an underpass at midnight because of the sheer volume of gunfire. We've never experienced that to that same degree here in the city. And at the same time, that the ability of fully staffing our precincts, the ability to respawn, might there be more fireworks, the whole bit? Yeah, but we've done that every year for years and years and years. We're not expecting any difference this year, other than we have the ShotSpotter technology that the mayor and the city council are paying for, and that we're expanding. That will effectively allow us to determine with more accuracy where are the shots coming from, and to go in. One of the things we would seek to do is retrieve evidence if in fact they are out there celebrating with their guns. That'll be of some help to us retrieving evidence.
Can I just make a comment to that?
Please, Jim.
We don't chase celebratory gunfire. We use it for intel. When I was a precinct commander up in the Bronx, we had a guy discharge an automatic weapon, and about a week later, we did a search warrant. We came up with 3 semi-automatic rifles, so we use it for intel. So if you're going to do it, be prepared to have a search warrant done on your apartment a week later.
Okay, on the preparations for New Year's, anything else on that before we go to other policing matters? Yes.
In the case of an emergency, how long would it take to clear out Times Square, and at what point is it filled up?
We have evacuation plans, contingency plans, in the event that it became necessary to have an orderly evacuation of the square for whatever purpose. And that has been part of our planning, part of our tabletops, and that's where the ability to, one, inform all of our officers with those smartphones, two, the ability to control the loudspeaker systems as far as keeping the public informed, so that we're very confident that in the very unlikely event that it was a necessity to have an orderly evacuation from the square, that we have significant numbers of egress points coming out of the square, very large numbers of police, that almost 6,000, who could help to deal with that, and a transit system that is at any time it deals with at 12:15 most of the people in that square looking to get out of the square. So in some respects, we have a clearing out of the square every year at 12:15 anyway.
Okay, and to the second part of your question, just checked with Chief O'Neill, it fills up in the last hour before the event. So half hour before the event is when you get to maximum attendance. Yes.
Do you have a full number of how many law enforcement under the NYPD will be on the streets of New York on that late?
We can get that for you. That it's one of the things we're not shy about putting out is what we put out in the street. There's no police department in America can match what we can put out on the street. Those 6,000 officers that will be here, That's larger than just about 3 or 4 police departments in the United States, and they're going to be within this multiple square block area. No, so it's we can get those figures for you, but those numbers will be in the tens of thousands.
And how has Paris, and how has it changed planning for these events, given, I assume, more information going in from the global partners?
What we try to do, as the mayor had referenced, is learn from every event that occurs around the world. We benefit from the detectives that are assigned already in 14 locations around the world. The detective in Paris, the detective assigned in Marseille, the detective in London were very helpful, getting on the scene very quickly to help us understand what was going on in Paris. They're embedded there. They have very good relationships, much the same as our detective in Israel keeps us very much abreast of what's going on, unfortunately, with their circumstances each day with the stabbings. Know that dealing with terrorism is the idea that it never goes away. It's a disease that unfortunately is going to be with us for literally our lifespan, and probably that of our children, unfortunately. And the department is constantly seeking to stay abreast of it and working with our colleagues in the federal agencies. So again, I'll reiterate that we're anticipating a very safe event. We're encouraging people to come to the city, enjoy it. It's going to be in the 30s, so instead of normally freezing to death out there, it's actually going to be a very comfortable night. No rain in the forecast, and hopefully just a lot of enjoyment. We also encourage people to drink responsibly, so you don't make fools of yourself while you're in here celebrating.
That is wise advice. Let me just, one other thing I want to reiterate from what the commissioner said. Think about the events, these very high-profile, internationally important events over the last 6 months or so. The papal visit was one of the most extraordinary events in this city's recent history. Tremendous joy in those days in this city. It was an extraordinarily complicated operation. I would say this honestly, the NYPD is so good they made it look easy. They had 170, I think it was, world leaders in town, the President of the United States in town. Came off without a hitch, and this city and all the visitors from around the world who came for the Pope's visit had an extraordinarily positive experience. The same again on Thanksgiving Day, the largest attendance in 90 years of the Thanksgiving parade. The Rockefeller Center tree lighting, an incredibly joyous moment, well attended. So the point is, we are very, very prepared, but let's remember, New Year's Eve is one of the great celebrations of the year. People in this city and people from all over the world are coming here to enjoy it. And the commissioner said it right. They can come here ready to have a great time. The NYPD will be on the job. Any other police-related issues now? Any other police-related issues that you'd like to bring up? Go ahead.
Mayor, I'm wondering if you or Commissioner Blasio could respond to specific aspects of the Tamara Rice shooting. Cleveland, there was the understanding that the officer had a history, badly reviewed, and yet he came into contact with the public. I'm wondering what the NYPD does to prevent those kinds of officers from coming into contact with the public.
The commissioner will speak to that. I mean, that is a horrible tragedy that occurred in Cleveland. I just want to note one of the things that I think is most troubling is that when you hear the transcript of the original call made to 911, the caller said, this is probably a juvenile, and said it looks like a toy gun, and obviously that information was not transmitted, and that is a particularly troubling element of that situation, but the commissioner can speak to how we handle things.
Actually, Mr. Mayor, speaking to that when those 35,000 smartphones are in the hands of every officer, right now they're in the hands of 20,000 of them. Additionally, the vast majority of our patrol vehicles have the tablets that are in those vehicles. The officers will be able to see everything that the dispatcher has seen, and oftentimes before the dispatcher even dispatches the call. So the circumstances in Cleveland that we're very fortunate in this city, we're moving toward a time that even as the dispatcher is entering information that she might not have the time to give out over the air, all that information is going to the officer that is going to get the assignment. Additionally, as the officer is responding to the call, he will be able to survey department files to determine what's the recent history of calls there in the previous 24, 48 hours. Are there wants and wanted at that location? Is there a firearm registered there? Is there parolees living there? That the wealth of information that our officers will have responding to a scene, emergency or non-emergency, is going to be phenomenal. And by March, this whole department will have that capability. We are going to be, one of our goals, the most technologically advanced departments in the world, not just this country. And that's going to be of significant value in the circumstance you talked about in Cleveland, that type of circumstance. Additionally, you're all well aware, those of you who are based in New York, because you heard it ad nauseum from us, we are expanding dramatically, thanks to the mayor and the city council, the funding, the additional officers, the training we're giving to our personnel. This class of 1,200, we just graduated, the best trained, guaranteed in history, the most prepared to go out into the streets of New York. 12 days of training in the precincts they're being assigned to. Additionally, they got the 4 days of training to deal with the emotionally disturbed and those under drug addiction, similar to the event this officer. He just completed his training, that 4-day training that we're going to be giving out to almost 10,000 officers over the next year. So to deal with a lot of the circumstances that you're seeing around the country, you're going to have to depend on the training, and we are making that investment in training. You're going to have to depend on officers understanding the need to de-escalate rather than try to escalate. And we're not going to ever, unfortunately, be immune or free from controversial incidents. But the idea is, through the constant training, constant review of what occurred so that we can learn from it, to try and prevent those incidents from occurring with any great frequency.
In Chicago, there's obviously a lot of debate about policing, especially around the mayor's decision there to sort of suppress video of a fatal police shooting of a civilian. In your opinion, is there ever an incident where you would make a decision to keep from the public video of a fatal police shooting?
Some of that works with the guidance that we receive from, whether it's if we're dealing with the U.S. Attorney, as, for example, in the Ghana matter, that we have put our investigation on hold pending the civil rights investigation being completed. We deal under the guidance of district attorneys, and now we special prosecutors appointed by the governor, the Attorney General's office. So we are not free agents in that circumstance, that we work under oftentimes the direction of a district attorney, special prosecutor, or the U.S. Attorney. And so, as you're well aware, those of you who cover these stories here in New York, no two of these cases are ever exactly alike. And in that regard, that videos are oftentimes very beneficial, as we know, but the videos aren't the end-all, because they can be construed in many different ways depending on who's viewing them and their particular perspective as they view them.
Yeah.
Mr. Bratton, 2 weeks ago, you said you would be pushing for new legislation targeting the behavior of street homeless people. I'm wondering if specifically you're planning new criminal penalties, and if anyone, if those would be resulting in arrest.
So again, that's a process that we go through with the City Council. We've begun those discussions on different options, but it's premature to predict the outcome, because it really is about discussions with our partners in the legislative process. We'll have more to say as that advances.
Spoke to the mayor and the police commissioner. There's a move by some to allow the use of hoverboards and electric unicycles in New York that will be up to the city where they would be permitted. What are your feelings about that?
I'll just start and then turn to the Commissioner. Look, we understand this is something that a lot of people have an interest in, and we want to make sure if they are used in the city on any larger scale, that they're done safely. It's done safely, and so that's also a matter we're going to work carefully with NYPD and with the City Council on how to properly legislate to ensure safety and appropriateness.
As the mayor has mentioned, my understanding is the City Council is developing a legislative proposal that we'd be involved in reviewing and contributing to. But being quite frank with you, I think anybody buys one of those things is out of their mind. That both for seriously, in terms of the spontaneity of them catching on fire. Many of you probably saw the video this morning of one in a facility that caught on fire in a box. You can only imagine if that occurred 2 o'clock in the morning, that whole shopping mall would have gone up. So if you want to expose your family to that, good luck to you, as well as the 2 to 3 hours it takes you to try to learn to ride the damn thing. Better put your helmets and your elbow pads on, because you're going to be banging into a lot of things. So before we go wholesale into this, it's going to require a lot of review and study. We live in an extraordinarily crowded city. You have enough time walking down the streets, let alone hovering down the streets.
Commissioner Bratton, in recent days, former Commissioner Kelly has indicated that part of the crime decline may be explained by changes in definitions of using of crime, specifically shootings. In the last 20 years, has the definition of shooting recorded by CompStat changed at all?
It's amazing the comments you'll make when you're selling a book, being quite frank with you. Those comments were outrageous. My cops work hard, very hard, to reduce gun violence in the city. So for him to denigrate that hard work that has resulted in shootings being reduced significantly in the city and claim in some fashion that we're playing with the numbers, shame on him. Let him back up that allegation. He's been too busy to respond, as you know, to all of you in terms of your questions about that allegation. Well, if you're going to make it, stand up. Be a big man and explain what you're talking about.
Just to follow up, I mean, there's no change.
You don't need any follow-up on it. I've already basically laid the challenge down to him.
Go ahead.
The NYPD's latest numbers show that overall, graffiti complaints in the city are up about 14%.
Overall, say again?
Overall, complaints about graffiti are up about 14%, yet arrests are down. Mr. Bratton, do you?
I'm just going to start and pass to the Commissioner. We've spoken to this actually several times already. We take graffiti very seriously. We take all quality of life offenses seriously. This is why I believe in broken windows policing. And sometimes the statistics cited are about short-term trends, but I can guarantee you we are going to go right at the graffiti problem and keep devoting resources. And part of the reason why we have resources, it certainly connects to the previous question. The NYPD has done such a good job of driving down serious and violent crime that there's now more available time to address quality of life issues. On top of that, by the end of next year, 2,000 more officers in terms of real patrol strength will be on our streets. So we're going to go at these quality of life offenses, I think, more strongly than ever.
Currently, the department relies very significantly on its transit police vandalism unit that has a lot of expertise on reading graffiti, if you can read what these characters put up on a wall. They're very good at it. And I'm going to be expanding that unit, again, with the resources that the council may have been providing. I'm able to put resources into whether it's dealing with homeless issues, in terms of dealing with the training for emotionally disturbed or drug-addicted individuals. Similarly for graffiti. And we've had a number of experiments underway. If you were to basically go out right now to the LIE and start at the Midtown Tunnel and go out to the Nassau County line, it's unlikely that you see any graffiti the full length of that. Chief Chan has been coordinating with the city transportation department that have been very quickly throughout the course of the summer removing graffiti on that highway just to see, can we do it? If you recall, there was most of you are too young to recall, but in the 1980s, there were 6,000 subway cars totally covered with graffiti in this city, and they began one train at a time, one 10-car train at a time. They painted it white and moved it through the city, and if it got from one end to the other and there was painting on it, they repainted that car. Similarly, on the highways, we began with the LIE to see if we applied ourselves, could we in fact do it? And I'm very pleased, because I'm up and down that LIE all the time, that literally for the last 6 months, Chief Chan and his people have been focused on it. And basically, you might ride out there might be something there, but it'll be gone by tomorrow. So there's an example of what we can do when we apply ourselves to it. Those 6,000 subway cars, they look a lot different now than they did back in the 1970s and 80s.
Sir, do you have any more information on an officer who's collapsed and broken?
This is the officer that you may be aware, one of our police officers this morning, we believe suffered a massive heart attack and passed away. On-duty officer, 20-year veteran of the department. His family has been notified there at the hospital. A tragedy that we have very preliminary details. We'll be able to give more out to you later in the day. But even while we were graduating those 1,200 kids this morning, he is an almost 20-year veteran of the department, basically going about his duties. And again, we believe it may have been a heart attack, but that's very preliminary at this stage.
Okay. Who else? Go ahead.
Yeah, unlicensed and illegal electric bicycles and mopeds are a notorious hazard around Manhattan, driven by delivery men. There was supposedly a crackdown on this. Is there any move to seize these?
This will be something that we'll be looking to work with the city council on. We get many complaints from council members whose districts are afflicted with these, the proliferation of these motorized bicycles, basically. And they have been proliferating. That we will work with the council to go at it in several ways. One, we do have Chief Chan and his people have the ability to basically stop them, seize them. But I'd like to also basically deal with the store owners who basically engaged in using these young men, primarily young men, instead of riding bicycles, now an increasing use of the motorized vehicle, which is illegal in the city of New York. So similarly, that after the first of the year, after consultation with the city council, particularly those council members who are very concerned about this issue in their districts, that it's something I think we have the capability and resources to become more focused on.
Okay, last call on policing is Emily.
The city and the police department are in a different place now than they were a year ago with the executions of the two detectives. How would you describe the morale of the rank and file? How's it changed in the past year?
That's a great question because we poll that, and the polling of that is that it's on the rise, which is very good. That last year at this time, we were in the midst of a significant tragedy, the murder of two of our police officers. We were in the midst of disturbances around the country that we were also experiencing here in New York. But I think over this last year, the city council, the mayor, I think the leadership team up here has clearly shown that it is committed to working on that morale situation. So by way of example, expanding the size of the force, a force that has been shrunk by 6,000 officers over the previous 12 years. We are also, for the first time in the history of the police department, fixing up all of our precinct facilities. They're all now going to be cleaned twice a year, private contractors. I'll be proposing budgets to the city council and the mayor that we've already had discussions about modernizing the bathrooms and locker rooms in every one of those facilities. We have been working on officer safety issues for them. The new bulletproof vests that the council approved that will be replaced every 5 years based on the warranty. We have been giving them the training they have been looking for. There's no police department in America that now provides the level of training that we provide. We have been modernizing our vehicle fleet to give them vehicles that are more comfortable to work with. We have been looking at the technology, as I've discussed, the smartphones that they're equipped with. We have expanded the number of tasers that officers use, not just sergeants now, but police officers. So from a morale standpoint, we have listened. And in everything that they have spoken to in terms of safety concerns, training concerns, equipment concerns, we are responding. Indeed, the mayor actually hired an additional 50 attorneys at the city lawyer's office to fight frivolous lawsuits against our police officers. So that an officer now, if he is sued, he is notified that he's being sued and then works with city attorneys to vigorously fight against those frivolous lawsuits, something that is of significant benefit to the officers, something that was not done in the past. So from a morale standpoint, something I'm very conscious of, and we've spent a lot of our time on our re-engineering efforts, understanding what their concerns are. We've recently computerized our career path development program so people can find a way to get ahead in the department in a fair way. So I'm comfortable in closing as police commissioner that we are in a better place than we were a year ago. And as we progress into the new year, we're going to be in a far better place because there's many other things coming down the line that will be of benefit to our officers in terms of their safety and their ability to police this city safely. Thank you.
Okay, last call on policing issues, then we'll go to other off-topic issues, and we'll let these good folks behind me go on with their good works.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner, very much. Let's have a little moment of transition. Okay, let's get assembled. Okay. Say again? Amen. Thank you. All right, Happy New Year in advance, everyone, and let's see if there's anything else on your mind after all those questions. Ross.
Do you think that the officer who killed Mayor Rice should have been indicted in big charges?
Look, I don't comment on the decisions of grand juries. I have to respect the process. I understand why people in Cleveland are tremendously frustrated right now, and as I said, one of the things we're trying to make sure is at the front end of the process, the right information gets to the officer. Because had the full story gotten to those officers, I would like to believe Tamir Rice would still be alive today. So it's something we're very, very committed to addressing with the smartphones and other technology. Yes. I will do my best to be reflective. I'm being prompted to be reflective.
It is the end of the year. Looking from you, how you feel the city has fared. I mean, what you think you could have done better moving forward? How you hope the city will do better in certain aspects? How you're going to.
I've done plenty of retrospective. I'd really like to focus now on going forward. I'm very confident about the direction of this city. You just heard, I think, an extraordinary explanation of all that is changing in the NYPD. And let me say, Commissioner Bratton has spoken about the last year or two in America and all of the profound debate going on about policing. And we know that policing has to be reformed continually. And the Commissioner said very powerfully at the graduation ceremony that this next generation of officers will be the change agents who will reform American policing, who will prove what it is capable of in its highest, best form. And that will include bringing police and community into full partnership, something that hasn't been achieved truly in many, many decades. So I am excited at the prospect of an even safer city in 2016, a more unified city, particularly in terms of relationship between police and community. I'm very excited about the reforms that we're making at the NYPD because they are taking hold more and more. The retraining is going to have a huge impact. You just met an officer who got the new approach to training and was able to save a life because he was properly trained in how to handle someone with a mental health challenge. Our officers were asked to deal with incredibly complicated mental health challenges before without the training. So a lot is moving that is going to make the NYPD more effective and the relationship between police and community closer. Very proud of the big changes we're making on other fronts. Our schools are getting better. We have a lot of work to do, but there's no question. The addition of pre-K, the addition of after-school programs, the progress we're making on graduation rates and test scores, that is very, very positive news. The job numbers, now they keep getting updated. The last time I used to talk about 170,000 new jobs since I took office. It's now gone up further. That indicates a strong economy and one that we're going to take into the new year in a way that I think is going to give more and more New Yorkers real economic opportunity they didn't have before. So there's a lot to be proud of in this city, a lot to look forward to. I never minimize the challenges. They are many, but we also have more tools to address those challenges than we've ever had before. Yes?
Mayor, you mentioned that you're going to up the quality of life enforcement, or you're expecting that.
Yep.
The Daily News and many advocates have pointed to the racial disparities in summonses and in quality of life offenses in general. How are you going to ensure that increasing quality of life enforcement doesn't compound racial disparities?
Two answers. The first is what Commissioner Bratton has talked about in terms of the peace dividend is crucial. You know, we had almost 700,000 stops in 2011. This year, we're going to be between 20 and 30,000 stops. We know that 90% of those stops were of people who had done nothing wrong. Those police statistics told us that. The very fact that so many fewer people are being stopped, that so many fewer young people are being arrested for low-level marijuana possession, the fact that, as the commissioners indicate, over 800,000 fewer encounters between police and members of the community, right there, that changes the real experience that people are having on the ground. And particularly for young men of color, it means they have had a less intrusive reality vis-a-vis the NYPD. The focus on fairness and equity is part of all we do, and the retraining is a crucial piece of that. The retraining is focused on improving the relationship between police and community, on helping officers be mindful of how to approach a situation and communicate more. In many cases, as the Commissioner has said, where in the past an arrest might have been the go-to option, there are other options that have been utilized very effectively. The retraining complements other pieces of the equation, increased use of body cameras that is starting to happen now. All of this will encourage, I think, profoundly, an atmosphere of greater fairness and greater accountability for everyone involved. So I believe that we can address quality of life crimes very effectively while focusing on fairness more and more at the same time. Yes?
Mayor, we wrote a story today about teachers at the early learning centers who are on food stamps and other forms of public assistance. You said that pre-K is one of your greatest accomplishments so far. Why aren't these teachers being given the raises that they've requested, first of all? Second of all, why isn't it paid on a parity level with teachers at the VA?
The couple of different points, and I'll just say it broadly. The Early Learn program includes a lot of childcare efforts that are very important but are not pre-K, and then there's also the pre-K efforts. So in some cases, we're talking about two different pieces of the puzzle. But look, we are in negotiations right now with the organization that represents those employees. They don't work for us directly. They work for nonprofit organizations. We'd like to see them do better, and we're talking right now about ways to help them do better. So more to come on that.
Mr. Mayor, will you be spending New Year's Eve here in Times Square?
Yes, I will. I will reprise my role from last year, pushing on that, whatever that button thing is, to make the ball drop.
Because one of your colleagues waited, and because I know you follow MLB, what are your thoughts, please, on the acquisition of yanking that position of Ronald Chapman, who's been accused of domestic violence?
I think, I think we always have to respect the judicial process, so I don't know enough about the case to know if it's been adjudicated. I think the Yankees often make controversial moves, and sometimes they don't pay off, but this one's too early to tell. I like the move made by the Boston Red Sox better.
Oh, I just wondered about, you had such a great view of dropping the ball. What's the experience like up there? You enjoy it?
I enjoyed it, but I think after you watch it year in and year out, I was expecting something very different. It really wasn't that different than what I saw on television. So also I went with two jaded teenagers who I was expecting last year to be really jazzed up. That did not occur. But it was still, it's a fun experience for sure, and it's a great moment for New York.
You said this morning on the radio that in 2016 you're going to focus on wages, benefits,
Yep.
affordable housing. Are you planning to announce new initiatives related to wages and benefits, or are you focused on implementing these current?
Well, again, we had, as I said this morning, we have the budget being presented in a few weeks, then the State of the City address. That's where I'll fill in a lot of those blanks. Clearly, we've put a huge array of initiatives into play. Things like the affordable housing plan, for example, that we're going to keep deepening and will reach more and more people with every passing year. So we're going to certainly be talking a lot about how we can increase affordability. But the wage and benefit issues, as you know, some of them we can act on here. We're very proud of what we did on paid parental leave as a big step forward for the city, and one I think will become much bigger as we engage each union in the collective bargaining process. But some of the most important decisions on wages have to be done in Albany, so I'm looking forward to the legislative session, where I certainly believe there's a growing momentum in the state towards a $15 minimum wage, and I'll be working in every way I can to help achieve that. Yes?
Mr. Mayor, your police commissioner, Mr. Bratton, just moments ago had a very strong criticism or critique of his predecessor, Ray Kelly. Do you agree with what he was saying there?
I think the commissioner spoke eloquently.
One of the biggest problems in 2015 facing the city was the housing crisis. Do you expect 2016 that will still be one of our biggest challenges? And is your affordable housing plan on track entering 2016 with the 10-year plan?
The affordable housing plan is on track now. As I think you saw last year, a lot of the closings for the year, a lot of the financing agreements happened literally in these last few days of the year. We're very encouraged by how we've come into December. We're very encouraged, of course, by what was achieved at Stuytown and Peter Cooper, which was something that has been worked on for years and years, was finally achieved this year, protecting 5,000 affordable units. What we did in the Riverton up in Harlem, almost 1,000 affordable units preserved. So I think our numbers are going to be very strong, but we won't have the final numbers till we get to the first week of January.
Last question.
I have a final statement for the year.
Yes, please.
Ready?
Yes.
Okay, was there no other question? Okay, yes. Okay, they get the last questions, then I'll go my final statement.
Can I follow up?
Yes, you can.
On the early childhood
Yeah.
education? I mean, I know they work for nonprofits, but they perform an important function. Do you believe they should at least be making $15 an hour?
So again, it's a collective bargaining process. I just want to be clear. Our goal is to get everyone to $15 an hour in this whole city, whether they work for a nonprofit, whether they work for the city government, whether they work for a private sector firm. That happens in stages, as you know. This particular issue you're talking about, I care about deeply because it's people who work with children, and I want to see them do better. But it is subject to collective bargaining, and collective bargaining has a lot of different pieces. But I do feel hopeful that we'll make progress in just the next few weeks.
Do you think that there is any relationship between the decrease in the number of stops the police are making and the increase in
Can you explain the theory?
Some people, maybe in the provider community, have guessed that there might potentially be a relationship between fewer people actually physically being in jail day to day and increased numbers of people on the streets or entering shelters.
Well, it's the first time I'm hearing that connection made, so I'll only speak broadly to it. I've certainly heard no serious professionals suggest that, and the police have not suggested that. Look, the last thing we want is to keep increasing our jail population in situations where someone shouldn't be in jail. Everyone here rightfully is concerned about the changes that have to be made at Rikers. I've been real blunt with you guys that Rikers must change, and there's a lot more that you're going to see happening as we reform Rikers Island. But one of the things that has to be done is to stop having people go to Rikers who don't belong there. Certainly no one belongs in Rikers simply because they're homeless. So if they violate a law and if they're subject to arrest, that's a different matter, but not just because they're homeless. So the way to address homelessness is what we've defined with the Homestead Initiative, and we're talking about those who are permanently on the street, to go out, find each one, find an individual solution to their situation. As I've said, they got to the streets, they had an individual path. Each person, once upon a time, had a better and more normal life. They ended up on the streets. We have to find their pathway back to a better life. That's what the Homestead Initiative will focus on, and everything we're doing in terms of the shelter system to get people out of shelter and to permanent housing, about 22,000 people so far, a lot more to go. But no, I don't have any reason to believe there's a correlation related to stop and frisk. Okay, my closing comment for the year. So, first of all, to all of you in your chosen field, last night Charlene and I went to the movie Spotlight. I want to strongly recommend it to all of you. First of all, it was very powerful for me as someone who grew up in the Boston area. But it is an example of all that is good and powerful about journalism, and I think it'll be inspiring. I urge you all to see it. And the second is, we'll be talking, obviously, in 2016 about the future not only of this city, but of what's going to happen to this country that will deeply affect this city. The American people are going to make decisions that will have a profoundly important impact on New York City. We had good news a few weeks back when the highway bill finally passed, and it involved progress for New York City that we hadn't seen in most of a decade, an example of a national issue that profoundly affected New York City. There was a ray of light there on the highway bill. We need to see a lot more of it in terms of mass transit funding, affordable housing funding, education funding, and other policies that will support New York City. So a lot will happen next year. I strongly believe you will gain insight from the latest edition of The Atlantic magazine, the article entitled "Why America is Moving Left." I think it speaks volumes about what next year is going to be and the kind of debate that actually offers an opportunity for real domestic issues that have gone untreated. Affordable housing, again, education, infrastructure, things that have not been sufficiently addressed, that particularly hurt New York City and other urban centers. Next year may be a real sea change moment. I think you'll find that article very interesting. That is my literature and movie recommendation for the holidays. I want to wish you all a very, very happy New Year. I assume I'll see a lot of you in Times Square on New Year's Eve. And we will pick it up with a lot of interesting stuff starting next week. Thanks very much.